So they sort of created their own art world, right? We do have art, or a Picasso or a Rembrandt costs, I don't know, $100 million, or I could never figure out art and why people would buy, traditional art for $5 million or $50 million.
Hey friends, welcome to Smart Venture Podcast, the best information for future CEOs. Starting a company is easy, but growing and managing it is hard. In this podcast, we sit down with the best founders, experienced leaders, and investors in tech and relevant space to give you the best tips to grow your company and grow yourself. Some of our most popular episodes are about crypto founders and investors. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and give it a 5-star. Hi, Yoni. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Grace. Pleasure being here.
You are basically the original OG in the stock trading as well as like the social trading platform. And so you started eToro in 2007, and the TLDR of your previous history was like you started trading when you just got your bar mitzvah, and then you got some money from your father, and then you started trading, and then you worked in the military on the technology side. So you have both on the trading end, the basic knowledge of finance, as well as you are also big technologists. And to start the show, I would love for you to go into a little bit on how you started and then how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I found my passion to capital markets very, very early on. I started trading when I was about 13, 14, and really fell in love in both capital markets, like the stock markets, and the internet. So I'd say as a kid, those two technologies and sort of looking at those two technologies and the similarities between them, right? Because the internet connects everybody around the world around information. And, I'm the oldest of generation Y. We sort of grew up with the beginning of the internet. And I was a geek and a computer programmer. And at the same time, looking at how capital markets moves money all around the world and how capital formation and the stock markets connect money and companies all around the world. And those sort of two technologies or infrastructures really were interesting for me and a passion of mine since I was very, very young. So I used to be on Yahoo Finance and the Raging Bull back in 97, 98, looked at various bubbles and bursts from small caps to obviously the dot-com bubble, which I've learned a lot from and always kept that passion. So when I started the company together with my older brother, Ronen, who comes from an industrial design background, so he's a product guy, he always used to make fun of me that it sounds like I'm very passionate about this industry, but it looks like I have an accountant fetish. Constantly look at charts and multiple screens, a horrible user experience. And we started eToro with thinking of how do we simplify the user experience? How do we create a better user experience for both making investments, but also making the decisions on where and how to invest? And that eventually is what led to our vision of opening the global markets for everyone to trade and invest in a simple and transparent way, and building eToro, which today has 27 million registered users and is the largest social investment network in the world.
Totally. I love that. And then you started this company with your brother, and this is not your first company. You started CD Right, and we'll go into that later. So you have also worked with some basically crypto leaders, like Vitalik Buterin was building, I believe, Color Coin with you back in time. And then you have had dinner with Warren Buffett. Your dad is super successful CEO. Curious, among all these leaders, who do you consider as on your personal board of advisors?
Well, I think, a long time as you grow a company and you meet various investors and advisors, you constantly find the ones who you ping pong with different things. So I say that I have a variety of advisors and mentors who I followed along the years. Both those I met, as well as those I didn't meet yet. But I think the philosophy of investing. I've always been passionate about sort of the philosophy of investing. How do you invest across time? How do you make sure you manage your risk, but still generate double-digit returns in the markets, and that belief that you can be a successful investor? I think that was really emphasized when I met Warren Buffett, because I've believed it for my entire life, but it was hard for me to talk about it because I always felt like, you're not supposed to tell people you can become a successful investor. And when you sit with one of the most successful, if not the most successful investors in history, and he tells you you can become a successful investor, and anyone can become a successful investor, it is like for me was a very significant change in my perception of how can we take eToro forward, and the value of the data of having people on eToro for only 10 years and 15 years with this long-term track record, and our belief that people that generate double-digit returns over 5 or 10 years will continue to do so because they're talented and experienced in capital markets.
Yeah, for sure. I bet like that's probably really like life-changing experience as like someone that you kind of idolize and then tell you that, you can succeed and then like keep pushing forward. It's definitely super encouraging. When it comes to like starting a company and building a company, what do you consider as like one skill that you're constantly trying to get better at? It could be like technical skill like coding, or it could be like soft skill like sales. Like what do you consider as something that kind of like make you very successful today?
One of my investors told me that a long time ago, and he told me a CEO needs to be like a headless chicken. He runs around all the various functions in the company, right? So some days it's finance, and some days for us it's trading. Another day it's marketing. Another day it's customer success. And he can sort of go deep and sit in that seat together with the chief marketing officer or the chief risk officer, and sort of stay there for a while and figure out what needs to be done to become better. So I think the diversity of thinking and flexibility of thinking for me personally was very important, because I've been able to really go around various functions in the company and sort of dive in and sort of fly out across the years. But I think really being a manager is in itself a diverse role. And for every person, it might be a different skill set that makes them successful.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious, like since you started eToro in 2007, now it's like 2022, like it's a long time, right? I bet the company go through like a lot of changes. Can you tell us more about, what is it like running a company for this long, like from the start as a CEO to now? Like how is your work kind of like shifted? And then like, is there something that kind of changed your company trajectory significantly throughout the years?
I think as the company's grown now, we're almost 2,000 employees globally. So by definition, your role changes. I'd love to know all the 2,000 people in eToro, but it's becoming harder to know people from all around the world in 12 different countries and offices around the world. I think over time, management becomes less of a specific sort of understanding of each parts of the business, and really about how do you consolidate high level into people and processes. So, when you grow a company, when it starts, you can sort of, it's similar to, the quotes that Facebook had in their office, right? So move fast, break things fast, ship, it's constantly about speed. And as you grow and there are more people in the company, it also needs to be about, people and processes and enabling freedom for people, like trying to decentralize. The more you grow, the only way you can move fast is if you give more autonomy for people, more freedom to people, and suddenly the role of the CEO changes from trying to control everything to put the control one layer under him to try and take that control and push it as down in the organization as possible. right? I think that's also something very beautiful about the crypto space, right? You look at how decentralized ecosystems grow, they really grow without any reliance on sort of the core part of the ecosystem.
Totally. It like, I mean, in terms of crypto, like at the beginning, everybody is like kind of like a doubter. And then like it seems like you were a believer from the beginning. It was like 2012 or something, when you wrote like Color Coin. And then, it seems like, you kind of foresee the future. Curious, like in your opinion, how did the crypto market shift? And then like, why are you so bullish about it? Like, why are you the OG bull in this case?
So first of all, again, as my passion has been from a very young age around the internet, right? So internet technology from one end and capital markets from the other end. And when I started eToro in 2007, this was pre-blockchain. And my assumption was that financial services work like the internet, right? You can move things are free. And then I learned how financial services work and how broken the system is, that nothing is 24/7, that nothing has good quality APIs, that nothing works on an open infrastructure, everything is closed infrastructure, that it's impossible to interact globally and efficiently, and sometimes moving assets can take 3 to 5 days in traditional finance, is really where I became passionate that the size of the opportunity is huge, and something really needs to break to become the internet of finance. That finance still is based on infrastructure from the 1970s, and that's, by the way, real. Like a lot of banks in the world still operate on code that parts of it was written in the 1970s and 80s in COBOL. So when I saw Bitcoin for the first time, I think this was 2010. I immediately sort of felt this is the same feeling that I had when I connected to the internet, the same feeling then I traded stocks for the first time. And this was like the perfect potential combination between the internet and finance. And I do think, and I'm a big believer in freedom and sort of laissez-faire free markets. And I think Bitcoin really does represent something around the philosophy of freedom of economic rights, of people's rights for ownership, but real ownership that you can confiscate, that they own, that they're not relying on third parties. And I think that type of freedom as an infrastructure is important for the future of the world. That's my personal belief. And that's why when I looked at it at the beginning, I said, this is not only about technology and improving what exists, it's about creating something that potentially can really help financial inclusion, really help people around the world communicate and transfer value to one another in not a 2 times more efficient way, in maybe 100 times more efficient way, maybe 1,000 times more efficient way. And that's why we really started looking and buying some Bitcoin back in 2011. And then we realized this is not only about Bitcoin. The underlying technology is potentially an infrastructure of the internet, of the finance of the internet. And how can we tokenize assets? Can we build the euro and the dollar and the pound and gold on top of the Bitcoin network? And this was very early ages of Bitcoin. So again, Bitcoin was very, very small. So it gathered people that believed in sort of, okay, this is interesting. Let's figure out how can we use this technology for more things. And that's how colored coins emerged. And we started writing the white paper. And funny enough, I think Vitalik, it was 18 when he pinged me on Bitcoin Talk to help write code in the white paper for colored coins. And that was really one of the genesis beginnings of everything that we see 10 years later today of NFTs and ICOs and stable coins and all of the variety of potential opportunities that can be written on top of blockchain technology. The way I see sort of, I call it from Bitcoin to the metaverse. So we've seen that progress from Bitcoin, which was really the genesis of everything, to colored coins and Ethereum and the other versions. And then really Ethereum came with the concept of smart contracts, which started changing the narrative from Bitcoin and Ethereum to blockchain, and the real opportunity of smart contracts and blockchain, which led to ICOs, IDOs, IEOs, and suddenly now we have, I don't know, at least 20,000 different crypto assets out there. And with 20,000 crypto assets out there in stable coins and algorithmic stable coins, that sort of led us into DeFi, right? So there are so many assets, let's build banks for them, let's build mini financial institutions and smart contracts. And I think that world is probably 10 to 20 years more advanced than traditional finance. And now with the jump into NFTs and suddenly having DJs and musicians and artists coming into that space, and celebrities and sports players, that brings culture into an infrastructure of financial technology. And when you think of an economy, if you build an economy and you connect an economy with culture, I think that's what I would call suddenly the emergence of the metaverse. There's like a community of people who have their own economy and their own culture built and not in their country, but really on a global scale.
Totally. I totally agree with you on that. Like in terms of like NFTs, like what are some use case that like people should apply it into their like daily life or like their businesses? Because right now, like on the traditional NFT platforms, we can primarily see it as like art, and then there's like the other kind of like social token aspect, which is people selling high ticket items, like an experience like a concert or like a conference or something, or like a restaurant or like 5 restaurants based on, you know, the current news. Like what's your thought on that? And like, do you feel like it's more of like a financial asset, or do you feel like it's art, or do you feel like it's like a social token or something?
I think NFT by definition is just, you know, one type or a couple of types of smart contracts, which define, you know, the technical ability. It can be connected to basically anything, right? So it can be purely a PFP, like the apes or the punks or the doodles. It can grow to something bigger, which is, you know, participation in the ape token and a part of that ecosystem. It could connect you into physical art. Today, there's a lot of physical art already connected to NFTs, but I think eventually it's about a product definition in the metaverse in digital form, right? So if digital assets is an inevitable future of most assets around the world, but when most people thought about the world of digital assets, they thought of currencies and stocks and maybe bonds and ownership, right? And I think what NFT brings into that, into the realm of digital assets, it could be anything. It could be a bottle of wine or a guitar or shoes or your Chanel handbag, anything that has either a product in physical form or potential opportunity in digital form could become an NFT. And I gave this example, and I think it's a great example to think of when, if you have any company, like why is Nike and Puma and Adidas all going into NFTs? And the answer is relatively easy. They look at a country, a specific country, and they say, in this country, I can say sell, you know, there's a total available market of 5 million sports shoes a year. I can be 20% of the market. I can sell 1 million shoes a year, physical shoes. But digital shoes, potentially I can sell for the same price, instead of 1 million, maybe 5 million, maybe 10 million. What is that market? Is that market limited at all? And it's not limited neither by space. People have unlimited shoes closets in the metaverse, or by price. Potentially you can sell a digital shoe for more than actually a shoe does, or significantly less. And the cost of the shoe is nothing. So you look at your business and you say, if I'm able to transform my business digitally, I can sell potentially the same product, but a digital version of it for potentially a quantity and a price, which is a 10x, and a cost, which is 0x. That's a much, much better business, right? And that is digital transformation of potentially entire industries that can move into that connection between digital assets and sort of not and traditional assets, shoes, wine, cars, anything. So I think once big companies, I think now we've seen a lot of the biggest, the largest companies in the world already figuring that out. We'll start introducing that, and we'll see more mass adoption of obviously the user experience of crypto becoming better and more mass market appeal. I think that's a huge, that's an opportunity in the trillions of assets being formed and sold in forms of NFTs.
For sure. How do you eTorify that experience for your own platform?
So we just launched our NFT tracker and explorer last week. Very, very happy to see customers already connecting their existing NFT collections into Delta. We have our portfolio tracker, which enables you to track stocks. It enables you to track all of your crypto assets everywhere. And now it enables you to track all of your Ethereum NFTs everywhere and explore 45,000 different collections of NFTs. And what we're working on right now is also our own art collection, and how do we at eToro, at Delta, work together with collections, with creators to sort of participate in it. And how do we eventually help users that right now are investing in stocks or in crypto understand how to either invest or buy products in the metaverse?
For sure. That's amazing. Like, how do you decide which goes into your, I guess, like your eToro's like first like collection of the NFTs? Like, do you guys have like in-house artists to like create those, or like do you guys like kind of like collaborate it or like select it from, I guess, like the a pool of designers or a pool of artists to launch those?
So I think, again, we're seeing how the market evolves quickly. We're very connected into sort of the NFT space and the crypto space, and obviously both are feeding each other. And we're looking at what's happening in the art world on the other hand. So right now what we've done is we've sort of repurposed a lot of people who worked historically on crypto to look at what's happening in the NFT space, and how can we look at the various NFT collections, art, work with existing collectors and collectors and creators to basically identify what we believe eventually will be here to stay.
Okay, so when you guys were building the social trading aspect, right? Like you guys were like sort of like also vetting all these like top traders. Like, what are some factors that goes into, I guess, like selecting people or like the thought leaders on your platform? Do you have like a program for them, or like what are some factors? Do they have to have a certain track record so people can trust them instead of like just like bluntly, investing into the space?
I think so. First, we have what we call the Popular Investor Program. And people get into the Popular Investor Program after they have a certain threshold in eToro and a minimum amount, I think it's $5,000 in their account to become a popular investor. And as you gain more copiers and more assets under copy, so more people are copying you with more money, you need to go through certification levels. So you actually need to do courses in risk management and portfolio management. You need to also increase your own skin in the game. So you have to have more money in your account. You need to have a longer track record on eToro. And what we've learned over time is what we sort the default page in eToro is actually the number of copiers. So we show people based on a lot of different parameters that try to filter those who are consistent and reliable for copiers. And then we just sort it not by performance or by risk. we always show performance and risk together, because it's very different to copy someone with a high performance and low risk to low risk, low performance and high risk. And then we sorted by the social signal of how many people are copying them, right? So we create a place where you have both the performance, the risk, the history and track record, and the ability to see how many people are actually copying them and how many people are actually talking to them.
Okay, so today, if I join eToro and then I started like investing in NFTs, how can I become the influencer on your platform?
So it's just the beginning for us in NFTs. Right now, you can become an influencer on trading crypto and stocks. But I believe in the future, it's going to eventually be similar. We're going to look at how can you talk about your portfolio. Your portfolio in NFTs is by default a public portfolio. Will enable you to share it and show it. And other people will be able to see as you basically start investing in more and more projects and potentially your performance over time.
For sure. Okay, so you're an ape holder, and assuming recently you just got a lot like ape coin and stuff. So curious, like, okay, so how did you heard about the ape and why do you buy it? And like, do you personally invest in NFT assets, or like basically like what are something that you find exciting in the NFT space that like we should be looking at?
So I think for me, the experience started last year in 2021, although people remind me, if you look at my account, which is assia.eth, you'll see also CryptoKitties from 2017. So I had some NFTs from 2017 as well. I actually had some NFTs from 2013, but I need to find them. So I think last year, what changed for me is being able to see how people around me that weren't in crypto suddenly were interested in crypto, right? In NFTs. And it showed me that the narrative is changing, because trying to explain Bitcoin to someone as an investment is one thing. Trying to talk to somebody about an art and a buzz around the art, and suddenly he wants into the whitelist right now and he wants to buy it. And he wants to buy it because he wants to flip part of it. He wants to put part of it in pictures in his art gallery. Like, led me to understand that what NFTs are doing, they're bringing a completely new target audience into the world of Web3, into the world of crypto through NFTs. And that for me was a key to sort of look at it more closely. And then what we started doing is we just found a couple of projects that were in their sort of beginning and started helping some of those sort of early stage. This was, H2 last year, but July in the summer, starting really to look at sort of projects that are looking at what's happening in the apes and the punks. This was, I don't remember exactly the pricing, but I think this was like I think it was the August, September suddenly bubble. And we said, let's participate. Let's see how this works, how these creators are able to generate, an NFT collection. We started talking to creators. And when we participated in the first couple of NFT launches and sort of saw how the mint works and how the community works, and suddenly seeing thousands of people changing their profile picture to this new collection, I think that really helped us understand how big the opportunities, and also helped me because suddenly I was a part of a couple of projects that started and then went up 10x, 20x, 30x. And because of that, like, I had the opportunity to look at buy an ape because I bought into other projects and then being able to buy the ape. I think, there are the top projects that I think when you look at every asset class, my most important question always is this asset class going to be here in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And the better, the clearer the answer on it's going to be here in 30 years, the better investment it is, in my view, right? That's why I think Disney is a good stock because I have a feeling my grandkids are going to have Disney Plus. And I'm relatively young, so it's a while before I have grandkids. And it's the same in NFTs. I have a feeling that, punks are a piece of history, and there are always going to be 10,000 people who are interested in owning a piece of history. I think apes now emerged as a piece of present history, and which represents something different than the punks. The punks were, the crypto punk movement, right? The apes are the people aping in to buy AMC and GME and Dogecoin movement, right? You follow it. It's a very different mentality of these projects. And I think they're here to stay as a part of a piece of history. And when you think of pieces of history, then scarcity becomes important, because all you need is 10,000 people who will want to own apes for the apes to continue to be as valuable. And as more apes become, as you see sort of holder behavior, right? I think now we have already 6,500 single addresses that own apes. You realize that gradually it's going to be a very scarce commodity, and people will need to give up their ape if you wanted to buy one, which is how scarcity works, how floor prices works. I think that's relatively easy to understand when you look at the blue chip projects, right? Whether it's now Doodles or World of Women, or emerging ones like Azuki. I think it's hard. I think finding out how something goes from 0.08 ETH into 100 ETH, I think that's very hard to identify yet, right? So it's really non-trivial. You really need to want and be willing to be a part of an NFT project, an NFT artist, because I think still the risk of it being unliquid because it's NFTs is significant, and therefore just buy shoes because you want to buy, buy designer shoes because you want to buy designer shoes, not because you want to flip it, right? I think that's a general advice in the NFT space. If you really want to become an NFT trader, that I'm still trying to figure that out.
I feel you. I totally think there's like some sort of like randomness to it, because you never know which one would took off. From like a technology standpoint, why do you think last year was a year that kind of NFT started like becoming mainstream? Because you kind of like predicted a lot of things, right? Like you were the OG like DAO believer. And then like, and by the way, like if you're raising funding today, like would you start a DAO and then raise it, or like would you go for the venture route, and why? Do you think DAO will be like the mainstream of like how company is running, or like do you feel like this is not going to be the major use case?
I'm a very big believer in DAOs, both for nonprofits like our GoodDollar project, right? So we started the GoodDollar project as a DAO. It's it's a way to form things that you want to truly be decentralized. A company is by definition not a decentralized entity. It's a local entity. It needs to be registered in a local country. It needs to abide by local rules, and it needs to have shareholders in it. So it's by definition a very centralized structure of working together. A DAO, I think, it is a great way to manage something in a decentralized way, where things are going to be changed. I think corporate governance in DAOs, ability to vote in DAOs, ability to arrange budget in DAOs, the ability to raise money through an IDO into a DAO. I think all of these are improving, and gradually we will see more and more and more DAOs. What is missing right now is a lack of clarity from the physical world, right? So, which is why I think it's great for nonprofits, it's great for cooperatives, but it's still a bit harder for profit because it's hard to connect it. And maybe in some places it's getting easier. It's hard to eventually connect a DAO in a company and where the value is. Is it in the DAO or in the company? Where does the enterprise value flow? So it's probably today still a dual track. It's hard to be only a DAO without a company. But if part of your business model is building a DAO, then that makes a lot of sense. I do think that in the future, I think the way to think about DAOs is if we think about, Bitcoin as digital gold and to some extent Ethereum as digital oil, DAOs are simply digital registry of companies, right? We used to think about, okay, I want to open a company. Where do I open it? And you would think Delaware or Singapore. And now you think, where do I open it? Ethereum or other, right? So it is, how do you open a corporate entity in the metaverse, in the cloud, and Web3 that's a DAO. It's just another form of forming a combination of people that can work together based on the rules and voting structure that they define. I don't have a good explanation of why NFTs took off last year versus before. I think a part of that obviously is related to the longest crypto rally in human history, right? So we're still in the midst of the rally, although it's like right now a bit of a sleeping giant. But obviously, a lot of people last year suddenly realized that they have just tons of money sitting in Ethereum and in Solana and in Bitcoin. And, $2 trillion, I think, if you look at 2020 versus 2021, it's probably like, $500 million to $2 trillion. So let's assume only $1 trillion of wealth was created. That $1 trillion of wealth that was created was looking for opportunities and doesn't want to go back to the traditional world, right? No, most people I know who made money in crypto, like you tell them convert that money into money in the bank, it's like blasphemy. Like nobody wants to convert real money to fake money. And that means there's, suddenly an additional $1 trillion looking for various investments. So they sort of created their own art world, right? We do have art, or a Picasso or a Rembrandt costs, I don't know, $100 million, or I could never figure out art and why people would buy, traditional art for $5 million or $50 million. But I think that's what happened, is that the supply created an ecosystem for art of the crypto, right? So this is like the history of crypto art, and this is about crypto art. It's the value of crypto art. And I think that's really what happened. I think crypto rally just led to it. And I think there's also some intersection in what we've seen, which is the rise of retail investors all around the world, the lack of investment opportunities in general, the expansion of social media as a channel for people to talk about any type of investments, the sort of ape follow ape mentality of the meme stock rally and meme crypto rally of Dogecoin and Shiba. So a lot of these, by the way, very oddly, you can map all of these to each wave of Corona, right? So for each wave of Corona, you can sort of add another layer, and the fifth layer of COVID-19 was NFTs. It's something in the last 2.5 years generated a much more global community, right? Because when people are stuck at home, they're on the internet. And today, when younger generation are on the internet, they're on the internet together with people from all around the world. So I think every and what connects all of these type of rallies, it's community forming, right? It's a very strong community forming with a belief system of a community. Like you have Bitcoin maximalists, which are like the guardians of the faith of Bitcoin, and anybody who thinks that anything other than Bitcoin is an asset, they'll shoot him down. And you have ETH fans, and you have XRP fans for each of those tokens. And now in NFTs, it just brought people who are not necessarily finance geeks or crypto geeks, but they can be a fans of something that feels for them more tangible, which is art.
Totally. I think it's so crazy to think like you're actually purchasing a coin, which is a type of currency, as like an investment because it's crazy. You don't see people, well, I guess you do see people purchasing like USD in the past as like some sort of asset.
Of course.
When it comes to like picking like which coin to buy, like, or like which coin to list it on a platform, like what are some factors that goes into it? Like, because we constantly see like crazy coins happen, or like, you know, like these kind of like meme coin happen. Like, how does a particular coin listed on top of a trading platform? And is there a kind of filter for it?
So in eToro, we do have sort of very strong filters because we're regulated as a financial institution, because we offer stock trading as well. So when we due diligence coins, it's not an opinion about the value of the coin. It's an opinion about what I told you before. Is this coin, is this crypto asset going to be here in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Is the technology there valid and won't break? Is there a team there that is financed in a sustainable way? Is there a community of developers that continuously develop into this protocol? So what we are looking when we list something on eToro is, I would generally say, sort of sustainability of the project, right? Asking ourselves tech questions, regulatory questions, liquidity questions, team questions, and then forming our opinion that we think it's reasonable to invest. It doesn't mean that you won't lose money and potentially a lot of your money if you buy that coin, because again, it could go up. Anything that goes up 10 times can go down by 100% fast or by 99%, right? But by definition, risk and return are somewhat linear in correlation. Something goes up, times it can go up down 50% very, very fast, right? And usually goes down faster than it goes up. So that's how we do our valuation. We try to look at the most interesting ones. We have 60 crypto assets today on eToro, and we constantly are looking for more assets to add. But it's really about, I think this asset's going to be here for the near medium term, at least, as an asset. I would generally say for anybody who wants to invest in crypto assets, first of all, really define, and that's true to any investment, also in the stock markets. Invest in what you understand and in what you believe in. You can try and believe in something that you don't understand. That's not a good investment. But if you understand something, right, you have a hypothesis for your investment and you believe in it, then that's a good investment for you. And now the question is the right timing, price, and allocation. And allocation is all about risk. If you have $50 and you're willing for them to disappear, because at the same time you could have spent those $50 in a store, you can take very high risk with those $50 to buy something that potentially will go up significantly. If it's a significant part of your liquid assets and you want to put $5,000 of something and it's a big part of your net liquid assets, you probably need to think about something that has less risk, right? So the least amount of risk in crypto, by definition, are the biggest coins. The least amount of risk is Bitcoin. After that, Ethereum. Those are the least risky assets that still have a potential upside. They're the least risky asset, but they're still riskier than most traditional assets. But again, it's a view of the world, right? People could say that the dollar or a local currency is more risky than Bitcoin because of inflation. But that comes to sort of your view of the world and where do you peg your view of the world.
What do you think of the roadmaps, right? Like, I mean, I was like chatting with people who founded like NFT platforms. Like, they're saying, I asked them like, how do you pick like which kind of like arts to import it onto your platform, and or like to rank them as like the top arts or something? And then they mentioned like the roadmap, assuming like for the coins is similar to that, like in terms of like the use case and everything. um how, because since like everything is so intangible in crypto, like, as you know, when people mention about like layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, um like I guess like as a non-technical person, we only have like limited understanding on what that meant. um for you, like, how do you kind of identify what could be a potentially major coin? Because right now, when we think about like Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's kind of like for them to just like go skyrocket it, it's like way harder than something like a Terra or like, you know, like like whatever is like very popular today. So
I'm somewhat a bit crypto conservative, you can call me, because I've been in this space for a very long period of time.
yeah.
A majority of my personal investments, you can look on eToro, my public profile is Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of the other sort of upcoming coins. I personally don't do those trying to pick the small cap winners in crypto, maybe because I did maybe 30 ICOs in 2017 and some of them have disappeared. But you know, we do have a team looking at it, identifying sort of what's up and coming within the top 200. I think going with something from X to 10X or X to 30X, I think that's a good opportunity. And sort of, I still do investments in the ICO space, but I think the level of risk and complexity there is still not something that I'd recommend. Again, people can be NFT traders, which is very high risk. It's, you know, in my view, non-linear, non-rational, but some people might have a talent for it. People can become art dealers, right? I think of investments versus, you know, flippers and traders as something that, you know, it's 80% investing versus trading.
For sure. Okay, so a little bit going back to how you started building eToro, right? Like, so why do you guys decided to go for like a social trading platform versus like, you know, like just like simply based on trading? Because it seems like just simply trading online on an app, it's already kind of like really popular based on like, you know, the Robinhoods of its world. Like, how do you kind of come up with the concept, and then like how do you kind of quickly build trust when, like, you know, when you are expanding eToro to many different countries?
So part of the answer for your second question is part of the first question. So when we started eToro, what we've noticed is a lot of users have a lot of questions, and coming in the space of investing, and they really want to understand what to do. We started by making the user experience simpler, but our user wanted answers on what to invest in. And we didn't have the answers because it's not our responsibility to tell our users, we think you should invest in this right now. But we realized they're looking for help. They're looking for ways to become educated about how to make decisions. And that's how social started, by being able to see what other people are doing and see their track record. You can trust them. If you can trust them, you can have a dialogue with them and you can ask them questions and they can talk to you and you can learn from their experience. Or you could automatically copy them, right? You can choose somebody, see their track record, copy them with $5,000. So I think it was our view that it's not enough to just give tools of the trade. We need to provide tools for people to become successful investors by educating themselves. And the best way to educate themselves was by enabling this social interaction between people, the copy abilities, the ability to communicate and collaborate and see the stats of each other. And I think that's really a powerful thing when you're thinking about the difference between us and other trading platforms.
I personally find like really, I always self-conscious when I'm like showcasing my portfolio because it's kind of like really personal for me. How do you kind of convince these people to be like, I guess like incentivize them by like giving them a portion of like whatever they make it so they become like another version of like a fund manager technically. So curious, like how
So,
do you convince people to be so open
so
about it?
first, the majority of our users are
Mhm.
public, right? You can see their
Mhm.
track record,
Yeah.
but you don't see how much money they have, right?
Mm.
So if you have an account with us, it could be a small account with us of $5,000, and
Mhm.
maybe you have other accounts as well, but that is your public portfolio, right?
Mhm.
So you can be proud in your public portfolio, and the majority of our clients have put their
Mhm.
public portfolios on eToro. They can always decide to opt out. So if
Mhm.
suddenly you feel ashamed of your decisions, you can decide to
Mhm.
opt out. But when this is an example, our top copied user gets from eToro today $150,000 a month and has $150 million copying him by about 30,000 people. So that you do have a financial incentive to
Mhm.
become a successful popular investor on eToro.
Mm.
So I think that's the combination is one, people do feel that they can share their investments with others because it'll support their portfolio as well. And second
Mhm.
is once you become a popular investor and you get from us more tools and eventually financial incentives, it makes sense for you to stay as successful investors for a long period of time.
Mm. When you're thinking about it as a business, like you have the technology part, you have the social trading part, and then you have the finance part. Like, how do you allocate your time and resources? Like you mentioned, there's like 2,000 people in your company. How much of them are like on the engineering team? And then like, I guess like we can just ballpark it. It doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
365 or something.
Yeah, it's around again, this very rough, but I would say it's around a third technology,
Mhm.
a third let's call it sales and marketing and customer service and
Mhm.
customer success. How do you
Mhm.
manage, can communicate with millions of
Mhm.
customers in 30 different languages? And a
Mhm.
third is operations, finance, compliance, local offices. How do you build the infrastructure of finance and financial
Mhm.
services to all of these users? That's very roughly.
Mm. When you're, I guess like when you're growing this platform, like how do you think of like go-to-market strategy? Because in each country, there's like a lot of financial limitations. And I think you guys are so successful at like just like entering a new market. And like I'm curious, like how do you map out like which country to go first? And then like how do you kind of like tackling all these like localization problems when it comes to you?
First of all, we operate as a global company and we
Mm-hmm.
have customers from 100 different countries. And so we have that opportunity to see suddenly what works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some countries, we have to make a decision to sort of open up in the country, like the US. So the US took us a while to open. We started in 2007, but only in 2019 we opened in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So we understood the US is a very big undertaking, so it took us a while. But I think for us, as we look at various markets, it's really about performance. Do we
Mm-hmm.
feel there's a product market fit? Do we feel that there's a big market opportunity there? And do we have proof that when we spend money, we get customers?
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think it's really amazing to see like how like a finance company could be like super successful like as operating as a global company. Um like okay, so I don't know how much time we have, so I'm gonna quickly ask my last question and then we have a 1 minute fire round. So you came from Israel. Like I have this book called Startup Nation. So can you chat more about like, how does the culture kind of influence you as an entrepreneur? And how do you think of things like differently compared to founders in from America or from China or like from like other countries in the world?
I think it's easier for me to talk about Israel versus
Mhm.
what other ours. I think it's always interesting to look at the cultural differences between various countries. I think Israel culture is a very direct culture. It's a very open culture. I'm the CEO of 2,000 people, but I can walk here and, somebody that joined the company a month ago will start complaining about something because we're a very open culture. Like there's not a lot of distance between the different sort of people in society. People share that because of the army service, because people have been together for 3 years in the army from everywhere around the population. And I think Israelis have a tendency of being very MVP oriented and very sort of finding the simplest path of execution. That's a very Israeli mentality. So if you compare it to some other cultures are very process-oriented or perfection-oriented. Israel is very fast solution-oriented. And I think, there's a lot of the things that if you think of sort of lean startup of coming from the US, which is more Silicon Valley concept, right? But when you think of a lot of the Silicon Valley mentality of lean startup and a lot of the books that have been written on startups in Silicon Valley, it sounds very much like Israeli culture, but I would say Israeli culture is just a bit more brute, less formal, more direct, more open. So that's very, very roughly. People always joke that in meetings, we have now meetings where suddenly, we have people from Australia, Singapore, UK, US, and Israel online. And all the foreigners outside of Israel will say, why is everybody shouting at each other? And we're like, we're not shouting. We're just talking above each other constantly in very high voices.
I feel you. I feel like that's like a pretty interesting observation. I see so many like really great entrepreneurs and like they're just like creating really successful platforms, and it's definitely interesting to look into the culture. You mentioned like Silicon Valley culture, a lot of it were kind of from there. I'm definitely gonna do more research on that. Okay, so we're at the 1 minute fire round for you. So number one, what's your favorite book?
What's my favorite book?
Yeah.
1984.
Okay. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Probably Elon Musk.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
That's a great question. Probably my father.
Where can we find you outside of work?
With my family and kids.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Yoni, for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.